At 40, Jonathan Johnson was the definition of success. He owned the most luxurious hotel chain in the world, catering to the elite who sought nothing but perfection. His business acumen was unparalleled, his decisions sharp and calculated. With wealth, power, and prestige at his fingertips, his life should have been complete. But beneath the surface, Jonathan was drowning in an unbearable loneliness. Love had never been a part of his world, not because he lacked opportunities, but because he avoided them at all costs. Flings came and went, leaving behind nothing but a growing emptiness. He could stand before a boardroom of investors, negotiate billion-dollar deals without breaking a sweat. Yet the moment he found himself alone with a woman, his hands clenched, his throat tightened, and words failed him. Every date he had attempted ended in the same awkward silence. When someone tried to get close, he always found an escape. An urgent business call, a sudden meeting, any excuse that would allow him to retreat into his solitude. The only person who dared to speak the truth to him was James, his ever-loyal assistant. "Boss, money won't keep you warm at night. One day someone will walk into your life if you let them." James had repeated this countless times, but Jonathan would always respond with a hollow smile and brush it off. Each night, he returned to his lavish penthouse, poured himself a glass of whiskey, and stared out at the city skyline. The lights shimmered in the distance, dazzling and alive, but within him there was only darkness. He convinced himself that love wasn't meant for him, but fate had other plans. Jonathan hated hospitals. Just the thought of being in one made his chest tighten. But this time, James wasn't letting him off the hook. "Boss, you can't ignore your health forever. It's just a checkup. It won't kill you," James insisted, practically shoving him out of the car when they arrived at the hospital. With a resigned sigh, Jonathan stepped through the glass doors of St. Mary's Hospital, mentally preparing to get this over with as quickly as possible. But what he didn't know was that one door opening would change his life forever. When the doctor walked in, Jonathan felt the air shift around him. Dr. Anna Moreno, the most stunning woman he had ever laid eyes on, stood there in a crisp white coat, her sharp yet kind brown eyes locking onto his. Her dark hair was neatly pulled back, her sun-kissed skin radiant under the fluorescent light. And suddenly, Jonathan felt completely out of his element. No business deal, no high-stakes negotiation had ever made him feel as unsteady as he did now. Anna flipped through his file, a small, knowing smirk playing on her lips. "Jonathan Johnson? Hotel magnate? I've heard of you." Jonathan swallowed hard. "Great. Now she knows exactly who I am." His hands instinctively clenched at the fabric of his sleeve, his gaze darting away, but Anna's voice remained light and teasing. "Relax, Jonathan. I promise I won't bite." There was a playful lilt to her tone that made him glance up at her again. And that's when everything shifted. As Anna stepped closer and pressed the cold stethoscope against his chest, Jonathan felt his heart pound harder than ever. She raised an eyebrow, her deep brown eyes filled with curiosity and amusement. "Fast heartbeat. Are you nervous?" Her voice was low, smooth, almost hypnotic. A wave of heat crept up Jonathan's neck. Who was he right now? A billionaire businessman, known for his composure, his control over every situation? Yet a single touch from her and he was unraveling. Their eyes met, and in that moment, Jonathan knew, no matter how much he tried to run from it, fate had just found him. Jonathan couldn't remember the last time someone had made his heart race like this. When the checkup ended, he thought he could leave, return to his normal life, but Anna wasn't letting him go that easily. Just before he stepped out of the examination room, she handed him a small piece of paper. Jonathan glanced down, recognizing a neatly written phone number. He looked back up, surprised. "Call me if you have any questions about your results." Anna smiled, but there was something more in her eyes. Jonathan wasn't a fool. He knew she wasn't just talking about his checkup. But instead of calling her that night, he slipped the paper into his wallet and hesitated for 3 whole days. His phone screen had flashed her number more times than he could count, yet every time he found an excuse to put it down. What was he supposed to say? "Hi, I'm Jonathan. I'm terrible at dating, but I can't stop thinking about you." That would be ridiculous. And then, just as he thought he had missed his chance, a message appeared on his screen. "Anna, you owe me dinner, Mr. Johnson." Jonathan chuckled, a rare, genuine laugh, and before he could overthink it, he replied with a single word: "Okay." 3 days later, he sat in a cozy, elegant restaurant. When Anna walked in wearing a simple red dress that accentuated her curves in all the right ways, Jonathan forgot how to breathe. "You look like you regret coming here," Anna teased as she slid into the seat across from him. Jonathan cleared his throat, adjusting his sleeve. "I don't do this often." "Date? More like have dinner with someone I actually want to talk to." Anna tilted her head, her brown eyes twinkling. She didn't say anything, just smiled, and somehow, throughout the evening, she made Jonathan forget his nerves. She told stories about her patients, about the chaos of hospital life, and for the first time in years, Jonathan laughed, truly laughed, in the company of a woman. A few days later, Anna invited him to a hospital charity gala. Jonathan wasn't fond of crowded events, but for Anna, he went. He was just about to slip away when he saw her. From across the glittering ballroom, Anna stood in a deep blue gown, her hair styled in an elegant updo, exposing the graceful curve of her neck, and Jonathan found himself unable to look away. Then, as if sensing his gaze, she turned. A small, knowing smile played on her lips as she made her way toward him, stopping just inches away. "Are you going to ask me to dance, or should I ask you?" Jonathan hesitated. "I don't dance." "Good, neither do I," she said, placing her hand lightly on his. A warmth spread through him at the contact. His heartbeat quickened, but this time, he didn't run. They moved slowly, no practiced steps, no perfect rhythm, just the two of them, in a crowded room that suddenly felt much smaller. And then, as the dance ended, Anna leaned in, pressing a soft kiss against Jonathan's cheek. He froze, his entire body stiffening, heat creeping up his neck. Anna laughed at his expression, her eyes twinkling. "Jonathan, you're even cuter than I thought." And that was the moment he knew he never wanted to let her go. Jonathan wasn't sure when Anna had become such an essential part of his life. After countless nights together, hours of conversations that stretched into the early morning, he began to feel comfortable in her presence. He was still himself, awkward, hesitant, unsure. But instead of running, he learned to embrace the feelings she stirred in him. Every time she smiled, every time her fingers brushed against his, the world felt a little less lonely. And then, that night happened. After dinner, Anna came to Jonathan's penthouse. The grand, luxurious space that once felt hollow suddenly felt warmer just because she was there. They stood close, closer than they had ever been before. His breath grew unsteady, his palms damp as the space between them shrank to nothing. He didn't know what to do. A part of him wanted to pull away, but another part longed to close the gap. Anna looked at him, her deep brown eyes filled with warmth. She reached out, gently touching his hand. A simple touch, yet it felt like his entire world was tilting. "You don't have to be perfect, Jonathan. Just be here, with me." Her voice was a whisper, a promise that he didn't have to be anyone else but himself. For the first time in his life, Jonathan didn't run. He leaned in, slowly, as if afraid that if he moved too fast, the moment would shatter. And when his lips finally met hers, a spark shot through him. She didn't pull away, she didn't hesitate. She kissed him back, soft yet intense, as if this was something they had both been waiting for. Something inside Jonathan snapped, breaking through the barriers he had built for 15 years. The fear, the doubt, it all faded as he pulled her close, holding her as if letting go wasn't an option. The city lights reflected through the massive windows, casting flickering patterns against their skin. There was no hesitation now, no awkwardness, just two souls completely lost in each other, in a night that neither would ever forget. When Jonathan opened his eyes, the sun had already begun to rise. A golden glow seeped through the curtains, bathing the room in soft morning light. But the most beautiful sight was Anna, still there, curled up against his chest, breathing softly in sleep. Carefully, he reached out, his fingers tracing the delicate curve of her cheek. Her skin was warm beneath his touch. She stirred slightly, lashes fluttering as she slowly opened her eyes. Jonathan leaned down, whispering against her ear, "I don't want to wake up without you ever again." Anna smiled, her brown eyes shining with something deeper than just affection. She reached up, cupping his face, her voice still husky from sleep. "Then don't let me go." And with a soft, lingering kiss, they both knew last night hadn't just changed their relationship, it had changed their lives forever. The days after that fateful night felt like a dream for Jonathan. Every morning Anna was still there, wrapped in his arms, and he realized this was what he had unknowingly searched for all his life. Everything between them felt effortless, as if Anna had never been a stranger. Jonathan no longer hesitated to hold her hand in public, no longer tensed when she hugged him unexpectedly. For the first time, he was no longer afraid of love. But then something else began to change. Something Jonathan had never anticipated. Anna started feeling more exhausted than usual. The morning nausea, the sudden cravings, and the moments where she felt utterly drained made her start questioning things. One late afternoon after her shift, she decided to check at the hospital. She assumed it was just fatigue, but when she saw the results, she froze in shock. She was pregnant. Her heartbeat pounded as the doctor smiled warmly and added, "Congratulations, Anna, not just one, but twins." Anna's hand flew to her mouth, tears welling up in her eyes. She had braced herself for the possibility of pregnancy, but she hadn't expected to be carrying two lives inside her. She could hardly process it. Just months ago, Jonathan had been a man trapped in his own solitude. Now, they weren't just together, they were about to become a family. That evening, Anna stepped into Jonathan's penthouse, her hands trembling as she clutched the ultrasound photo. Jonathan stood by the window, a glass of whiskey in hand, but the moment he saw the look on her face, he set it down immediately. "Anna, what's wrong?" He walked toward her, concern evident in his eyes. Anna didn't speak. She simply held out the small black and white image. Jonathan frowned, taking the photo, his gaze scanning the details. 1 second, 2 seconds. Then he froze. "This?" His voice was rough, unsteady. Anna took a deep breath, her eyes shimmering with unshed tears as she whispered, "We're having a baby, Jonathan, and it's twins." Jonathan stood motionless. His eyes widened, his grip on the paper tightening, as if afraid it would disappear if he let go. "Twins?" Anna nodded, her lips trembling as she tried to smile through the overwhelming emotions. And then Jonathan shattered. He let the ultrasound slip from his fingers, wrapping his arms around Anna, holding her as tightly as he could, as if grounding himself in reality. For the first time in his life, Jonathan Johnson broke down in tears. Not from pain, not from loneliness, but from pure, unfiltered joy. "We're going to have a family." His voice wavered, his lips curving into a trembling smile even as tears spilled onto his cheeks. Anna clung to him, her heartbeat syncing with his. "We already are, Jonathan." And in that moment, he believed in love. No more fear, no more doubt, just him, Anna, and the two tiny lives growing inside her. Jonathan once believed that his life would always be defined by solitude. But now, as he looked into Anna's radiant eyes and placed a hand over her growing belly where two tiny lives were beginning to take shape, he knew he never wanted to go back to the man he used to be. From the moment he found out Anna was pregnant, Jonathan changed completely. If work had once been his sole priority, now Anna and their children were all that mattered. Every morning, he insisted on driving Anna to work, despite her protests that she was still perfectly capable. "I don't want you driving when I can take care of you," he'd say, his voice leaving no room for argument. In the evenings, instead of burying himself in contracts and business meetings, Jonathan started learning how to cook, and although his skills in the kitchen were questionable at best, he refused to give up. "What are you doing?" Anna chuckled, watching him struggle with an online recipe, flour dusting the front of his expensive dress shirt. "Trying to make you breakfast," Jonathan replied with utmost seriousness. "With those ingredients, I'd say we're in for a very creative dish," she teased, though her eyes shone with adoration. He might have been a disaster in the kitchen, but when it came to being a father, Jonathan was already perfect. Each morning before getting out of bed, he'd place his hand over Anna's belly, whispering in a voice so soft, so full of warmth. "Good morning, little ones, it's Daddy. Your mom is feeling sick today, so be gentle with her, all right?" Anna watched him, her heart swelling with love for the man in front of her. Jonathan had once been a cold, untouchable millionaire, trapped in a world of work and invisible walls of his own making. But now he was becoming a man filled with warmth, a father overflowing with love. Every night he'd spend hours reading parenting books, meticulously learning about pregnancy and infant care. And when it came to setting up the nursery, he was clumsy but determined. From assembling cribs to picking out the perfect shade of paint to folding tiny baby clothes with careful precision. One evening, Anna walked into the nursery to find Jonathan adjusting the crib, his brows furrowed in concentration. "You do know you could hire someone to do this, right?" She leaned against the doorframe, watching him with a soft smile. Jonathan turned, wiping sweat from his forehead before shrugging. "I want to do it myself. I want our kids to know that even before they were born, their dad was ready to do anything for them." Tears pricked at Anna's eyes. Jonathan was no longer the man who shied away from love, no longer the man who ran from his emotions. He had changed, and this time, it was forever. Jonathan never imagined himself kneeling before someone, holding a ring in his hands. He once believed that love wasn't meant for him, that his life was destined to be filled only with numbers, billion-dollar deals, and empty rooms devoid of warmth. But then Anna came along, and everything changed. She didn't just walk into his life. She brought light, awakening a part of him he had long thought was lost. On a starry night, Jonathan led Anna to the private garden behind his estate, a place he had secretly spent weeks preparing. Strings of golden fairy lights twinkled above them, casting soft reflections on the still waters of the pond. The air was crisp, the sky stretched infinitely above them, scattered with 1,000 glittering stars. Anna smiled, her eyes glowing as she took in the breathtaking scenery. "Jonathan, this place is beautiful," she whispered, but as she turned to him, she realized he was no longer standing beside her. He was kneeling before her, his hands trembling slightly as he opened a velvet box. The ring sparkled under the warm glow of the lights, but Anna couldn't take her eyes off Jonathan, the man who was looking at her with a depth of emotion words could never fully capture. "I used to believe I was meant to be alone, that love was something I couldn't give or something I didn't deserve." His voice was low, steady, carrying the weight of a truth he had buried for years. "But then you came, Anna. You saw me, the real me, even when I never saw myself. You gave me a family, a life I never thought I could have." He took a deep breath, his heart hammering inside his chest. "I can't imagine my life without you in it, Anna. Will you marry me?" For a moment, the entire world seemed to stand still. Tears welled up in Anna's eyes, but they weren't from hesitation. They were from the overwhelming joy swelling inside her. She nodded instantly, her voice breaking as she whispered, "Yes, yes, I will." Jonathan let out a breathless laugh, so relieved he could barely contain it. He stood, pulling Anna into his arms, and they kissed beneath the endless sky. Around them, the lights still twinkled, the stars still shone, but in this moment, there was only the two of them, lost in something deeper than time itself. Jonathan laced his fingers through Anna's, his other hand resting gently over her belly, where two tiny hearts beat beneath her skin. Together they looked up at the vast sky, the stars flickering silently, like the quiet promise of forever. Jonathan exhaled, his voice soft, carrying the truth he had once feared but now fully embraced. "For years I thought I was meant to be alone, but love changed everything." And in that moment, Jonathan knew he had finally found his home, in Anna, in their children, and in a love strong enough to pull him out of the darkness forever.